Hello everyone, welcome back to a brand new episode of Fin React. Michael here today. Well, we go back to more Yu-Gi-Oh stuff after you saw my card opening packs. We need to go over exactly where the timeline of Yu-Gi-Oh actually began. So first what we're going to do is go backwards into the depth of Yu-Gi-Oh. But of course our friends from Crunchyroll Inside Anime will do that for us. Of course we're going to go through the first three, which is Duel Monsters, 5Ds, and GX. In no particular order. But anyway, let's enjoy the video, guys.
Yes, we are back once again.
Oh.
Again, and this time, we're
That is not Yugi.
about the classic anime, about the legendary Duel Master. Yes, folks, today we're doing a timeline video for the one and only YuGiOh. A few things to keep in mind before we start. Compared to other series we've done timelines like Evangelion, where the many timelines all play a part in the grand narrative, Yu-Gi-Oh! Was a series made to sell cards. Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, GX, and 5DS, tons and tons of people worked on these shows, and plots and canon for kids anime isn't going to be as consistent as the other series. And
I think the three best series are the first three, which is Duel Monsters, GX, and 5D. I think they had the same concept as they had with Pokemon. Pokemon was the concept of selling cards, embark on the TV show, and make everything popular. Not like today with all these damn scalpers for Pokemon, but I have not seen a Yu-Gi-Oh! Scalper yet. So that must be a good sign that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is actually safe for now from these pesky scalpers.
there's not too many hard dates, so we'll do our best to spell it all out for you. We're only covering the first three shows because Zexal, Arc 5, and Reigns are supposedly separate canons.
And to be honest, no one really likes the concept of the dueling systems of Zexals, Arc V, and Vrans. Even 5D was. Like, I think once they introduced synchro summoning, people at the age of 30 were just simply like this. What the hell is synchro summon? That's why I think the first two GX and Duel Monster was very simple card game. And then they invited synchro summoning. And then in pendulum summoning was in Arc V. Then you had XYZ summoning. Then you had, I don't know what the fuck they do in Vrans. But to be honest, I think after GX, the summoning system was just so confusing. I think now, even with the video games we play, I know I eventually will do it on the Fin Gaming channel, but it's like the whole concept of how this works is so confusing with a lot of these summonings. I just remember back in the day, you can sacrifice your 4-star monsters to summon a 5-star or a 6-star, or ritual summon, or fusion, with a polymerization.
People send me to the Shadow Realms for my pronunciation. Yu-Gi-Oh! Zeal is the original Japanese pronunciation, but in the dub it is pronounced as Zexal, which is what I will call
Tomato.
Zeal, aka Zexal. But some people have speculated that there was in fact a timeline split, where we have a 5D's timeline and another timeline where Zexal and Arc 5 takes place. This is possibly due to Kaiba Corp, and Seto Kaiba dying, NRD. You know what? I'll get back to that later.
Why is everything revolved around Kaiba Corp for some reason?
Anyway, Season 0 is also not included in this timeline, and the characters from previous series who show up in Arc 5 are considered to be from alternate dimensions and not actually the same exact people from their respective series. Also,
So, I guess the equation of Crow and Jack, who were in Arc V, were not technically part of it. They were just like the future or something. Kind of confusing.
The English names were going by the dates given by the Japanese version of the series. Many dubbed episodes of GX and 5DS were cut, and some timeline facts were only stated in those cut episodes. Furthermore, when it comes to the original show, everything that takes place in the 1000 BC period was changed to 3000 BC in the dub for some Unknown reason.
No reason.
With all that's out of the way, it's time for children's card game anime lore. Also, it's time to, the duel. The whole bit. Okay, let's do the same old gag where I turn the board around. Spin this around.
Oh, you didn't spin it, so I'm a little disappointed.
Yeah, sit back down. By the way, this dual disc cuts into your wrists. Fun fact. It hurts. Also,
I wonder how much you can actually nowadays find and actually afford to get a dual disc. Someone send me a dual disc below. I'll put a PO box number somewhere. Just kidding. Save your money for more important things, like a car, a house, other adult stuff. Also, adults, please stop wasting thousands of dollars on card games like Pokemon. Let the kids enjoy their moment.
this cuts into my fingers. Also hurts. I'm doing this for you, kids. I'm doing this all for you. The earliest time events in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are known to have taken place in the anime canon roughly around 8000 BC. There are two separate incidents to mention that comes from the original Yu-Gi-Oh! And the 5DS series. The first comes from OG Yu-Gi-Oh! With the mythical Atlantis. In the Yu-Gi-Oh! Canon, it was an advanced society where people lived happily together with the spirits, which were the real-life duel monsters. Long story short, Atlantis got destroyed because people's desires turned their hearts dark and they lost their connections to the spirits. Damn.
I think that's during the darts era of Yu-Gi-Oh! Seasons. I believe season 4 when darts was the main villain, and that was with the Seal of Orichalcos, or in Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged, Seal of Orichalcos.
It's like capitalism. The Atlantis story was basically a minor part of a filler arc, whereas 5D's incident at least played into the show's lore a little more. Way before there were special mega cards, Yusei Fudo and the motorcycle riding gang could use the actual Crimson Dragon and Crimson Devil, aka Red Nova, fought in Nazca. An ancient signer, a 5D specific term, helped the Crimson Dragon seal the Crimson Devil away. You following me? Hope you're following me, because I can't even follow myself. Okay, so 5,000 years later, we get to 3000 BC. The Crimson Dragon would have fought another battle at Nazca, where it fought the wicked gods, sealing them into the earth, creating the Nazca lines. This battle between dragons was part of fated battles between the signers and dark signers that occurred every 5,000 years. Fun fact, the Nazca lines are a real thing in Peru. Now, whether...
That's actually kind of cool. But that was actually my favorite part about the Yu-Gi-Oh! Season when they did the Dark Signer battles. I think that was kind of cool because it brought a lot of good emotions in some of those fights and learned about more stories of characters and sacrifices and all that stuff. So I have to say 5D, that was my favorite one. I think that's Season 2.
Dual monster gods reside inside of them has yet to be seen in real life. Hopefully we don't see any of that. Now we jump a couple thousand more years to a 1000-ish BC. It's not really 1000 BC, it's 1000-ish. This one was 3000 BC in the dub. So this is where a lot of the lore and history from the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Series dealing with the pharaohs and the Millennium items in ancient Egypt all takes place. Before Atem, aka Yami Yugi, aka Other Yugi, aka the Pharaoh, aka Yugi Boy but with bomb-ass eyeshadows, his father Aknam Kanan was in charge and he had a contentious relationship with his jealous brother Akhenaten. At first things were peaceful. Atem was born but their kingdom fell under attack. Aknam Kanan wanted peace but Akhenaten felt violence was necessary. When the threat grew too great, Akhenaten suggested creating the Millennium items from the Millennium spellbook to help protect the kingdom. What he neglected to tell his brother was that there would be a sacrifice, and the sacrifice would require 99 lives. A sacrifice Akhenaten secretly carried out, what's referred to as the Kul Enna massacre. Now, the kingdom was saved, but when Aknam Kanan found out about the human sacrifice, he got really depressed, and then he died. Now, aside from the creation of the Millennium items and the whole fate of Egypt changing, the Kur Enna massacre led to two things. Atem would eventually become the pharaoh, and Bandit King Bakura, the original entity of the spirit inside regular Bakura's Millennium Ring, had its own sentience separated from the Bandit King, who witnessed the tragedy as a child firsthand. This would set off his
PTSD.
path of vengeance. Totally not convoluted at all. A very basic, simple card
Well,
game story.
yeah.
During this time, dual monster cards didn't even exist yet. So how did the Pharaoh, Bandit King Bakura, and Priest Seto, who isn't Seto Kaiba, and others duel? Via giant stone
Stones.
tablets, which could summon apparitions of monsters, of course. We'll quickly summarize the important duels that happened. Bakura raided Atem's father's tomb, causing Atem to summon Obelisk the Tormentor and demolishing his ass. Then you had the Battle King Bakura lose again to Mahad, a priest who served under Atem. However, to win, Mahad merged with this Ka, a dual monster spirit, becoming the Dark Magician. Yeah. There's a fun fact. Dark Magician was at one point just some dude.
It's like the Dark
Now,
Magician
Bakura
girl.
managed to win one over Akhenaten, infusing him with evil in the process, somehow creating Blue Eyes White Dragon. Yeah, even Blue Eyes White Dragon was just a dude. Some more stuff happened, and this all leads to Bandit King Bakura and Atem's second Ka battle, in which Atem is defeated, setting off a chain of events eventually leading to the big bad of the Egypt, aka Dawn of the Duel arc. So, it turns out Yami Bakura, who had been manipulating events behind the scenes, was actually being used as a vessel by Zork Necrophades, a great evil god whose power was tapped into to create the Millennium items. Yeah, totally normal stuff. So anyway, Bandit King
Sounds
summons
legit.
him and takes the combined efforts of Atem, Priest Seto, regular Yugi, regular Kaiba, and friends who, if we've forgotten to mention, would have experienced these events via Memory World to take him down, which involves nonsense like the Pharaoh becoming the Black Luster Soldier and fusing with Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon from Season 5, Episode 46, as well as the good guys summoning the Creator of Light. It was in the middle of this climax.
Which I think is the equation to all the Egyptian god cards fused into one.
battle, we found Yami Yugi's real name was Atem all along, from Season 5, Episode 47. After the battle, Yugi and pals return to the real world, and Atem names Priest Seto the next pharaoh before crumbling to dust. And that, folks, finished our time in ancient Egypt and 1000 BC.
Is that technically Atem's demise of when he passed over his spirit over to Seto?
As an aside, elsewhere, Leaster, a secret society type group from 5Ds, first formed. So somewhere like around here, maybe? Yeah. On another note, in an unknown time in the past too, around, I don't know, YuGiOh from GX and the original Supreme Kings were living their first lives in Neospace. That makes
No sense.
total sense, right?
None.
Right?
No.
From here, we jump way forward in time. But before we catch up to Yugi and the gang, we have to mention his grandfather's expedition to the Valley of the Kings, the Pharaoh burial ground in the 1960s. It's here when he obtained the Millennium Puzzle before giving it to Yugi at the start of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters. We also want to note that chronologically, the Battle City's big bad
Marek.
backstory, which involves patricide.
Bakura, what you
sometime before the
doing?
show began.
Bakura.
Matt was 16 at the time of Battle City, and he was 11 when this whole backstory went down. So we can call this.
I wanted to say is one of my top few favorite rivals with Yugi was with Merrick because it was just kind of like iconic, and there were so many moments in that series that just were very much talked about.
Period. 1990X, because we don't know the exact date, minus 5 years. Yeah, that's what
That
we'll
makes
say.
no
A
sense.
second thing to note, at another unspecific time before the series begins, Kaiba takes over his dad's company. Finally, some guy who isn't Albert Einstein, named Dr. Eisenstein, starts repeatedly running the Nobel Prize in Dual Physics from 1996 onwards. Yes, dual physics. E equals
Dueling.
MC duel.
Yeah.
Here, 1996, I guess. Kazuki Takahashi started the original manga in 1996. Our time, not not Yu-Gi-Oh time.
I
And
wonder if the manga still actually exists for these ones. I was gonna say I have to look it up one of these days if I can actually find some Yu-Gi-Oh manga. It'd be actually kind of cool.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, the anime, started in 2000. Not many hard dates are given, but the events of the show can be assumed to happen around this time, which we'll call 1990X. So sometime in 1990X, somewhere between 96 and the year 2000, Yugi's grandfather gives him the Millennium Puzzle. When Yugi solves the Millennium Puzzle, he becomes one with Yami Yugi, revealed to be Atem, the pharaoh from the 1000-ish BC. So far, Kaiba destroys Yugi's grandfather's Blue Eyes White Dragon. Then Grandpa gets more owned when Pegasus traps him in the Shadow Realm, which doesn't exist, actually. Check out History of Yu-Gi-Oh! Videos for that bombshell of a fact. Pegasus also...
I would have to go look at that because I'm actually quite interested in that one. But, you know, it's really weird. The fact that back in the day in Yu-Gi-Oh!, even when you played Forbidden Memories, the fact that you can just summon a monster that was like 3,000 attack points wasn't much of a big deal. And it seems like nowadays when we do it, it's like, nope. You had to sacrifice 2 of your monsters for it. It was like, okay. So I had to get rid of 2 monsters on the field to put 1 monster out. Which back in the day when Yu-Gi-Oh! And Yugi and Seto were fighting, he was able to summon all 3 Blue Eyes out on the field.
Steals his Millennium Eye in the process, and eventually the whole squad travels to Pegasus Island to rescue Grandpa in the classic Duel Kingdom arc of the series.
I will admit that's one of my few top favorites. I would have to say the original Pegasus one is definitely like number 2. Sea of Orichalcos would be number 3, and I would put the Merrick stuff at least 4.
Little neat doodad with the little stars, and yeah, good times. Duelist Kingdom is the first huge story in Yu-Gi-Oh! Basically, Yugi wins nearly all of his duels except for the time Kaiba pretty much threatened to kill himself if Yugi doesn't let him win.
Yeah, that was quite funny. Could you imagine if that actually didn't happen and Yu-Gi-Oh! Won? Crazy, right?
Yeah. Totally normal stuff, Kaiba. Also, early in the Duelist Kingdom arc, we meet Bakura, who is the owner of the Millennium Ring, in which inside Yami Bakura, who is secretly Zork Nephrophades, lurks inside. Yeah, you following me? Keep on following. So, back to Kaiba. He used that drastic measure against Yugi because Pegasus had Shadow Realmed his brother, Mokuba, like Yugi's grandpa. After he beats Yugi, he gets the chance to take on Pegasus, and fails and gets Shadow Realmed himself. Womp womp.
Everyone's getting Shadow Realmed.
Yugi wins the Duelist Kingdom tournament, defeats Pegasus, and saves everybody. So we see some nods to the overarching story in the epilogue. Yami Bakura yanks Pegasus' Millennium Eye out of his body, and we're introduced to a Millennium Key owning Shadi, a mysterious character who gave originally Pegasus the eye during an unspecified time in the past. Shadi even enters Yugi's mind and sees it as an entirely separate chamber for Yami Yugi. At the end of the epilogue episode, he warns Yugi that whoever stole Pegasus' eye would come for the puzzle. After Yugi...
I had to admit that Shadi was the most random character in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Series. I think to me he didn't really have that much of a resemblance. I mean, he gave some hints about what the future is going to be like, but I felt like Shadi needed to have more timing. Because it was like after the whole Pegasus battle, it's like, hey, there's this guy named Shadi going around. I'm going to go into mine and Yugi. And meanwhile, it's Autumn, and he's like, oh, enter this little world of crazy and make-believe and what the fuck. Besides, enjoy your time. Oh, by the way, someone stole Pegasus' eye. He's going to become the ruler of the timeline, which was crazy.
YuGiOh takes a brief hiatus from cards to play dice. We start a very plot-heavy arc. Battle City arc.
Yeah, I was going to say Battle City.
Battle City really upped the stakes. The whole thing is kickstarted when Ishtar, owner of the Millennium Necklace, reveals Duel's secret ancient Egyptian history to Kaiba.
Where would you put Ishtar? If you had to put the top 10 women of Yu-Gi-Oh!, where would Ishtar be in your top 10? I think to me, she's like a really close number 6 and 5. Or something about her is just draws my attention. I'll leave 1, 2, and 3 to you guys to figure that out. Comment below your prediction. I'll tell you if you're right or wrong.
and tells him about the 3 Egyptian god cards. She even gives him Obelisk the Tormentor, after which he sets up a city-wide tournament where winners take cards from the losers in an attempt to find the other 2 cards. However, Kaiba's not the only one looking for the god cards. Enter
Rare
Mark,
Hunters.
owner of the Millennium Rod, and his team of rare hunters who are willing to utilize underhanded tactics to get what they want. At this point, Yugi starts wondering about his origins, and after meeting Ishtar, who tells him if he wants his memories, he has to recover all 7 Millennium items. Yeah, this arc becomes one big mess. Delicious. Like before, we can't go over every duel, because there's a lot of duels, but I will give you the summary. So, Yugi and friends duel the Rare Hunters and other randos a bunch, obtaining Slifer the Sky Dragon along the way. Before Marek reveals himself and generally comes out on top. Yami Yugi and Yami Bakura duel once again, and by this point, everyone's aware Bakura has an evil side. Marek, the bad guy, has a eviler Yami Marek inside of him too, who dominates My Valentine in a trio of episodes that were heavily censored in the US because it clearly shows in the Japanese version that My Valentine gets tortured. This is about cards.
What? What? Explain? What? Come on! America, what are we doing wrong? Now I have to go back and research this for scientific reason? What am I doing?
Wait, this is about card games, like card games.
No.
Ishtar is revealed to be Marek's sister, and we're brought to
we
the
knew that
climax
one.
of an arc with Yugi, Joey, Kaiba, and Marek in the Battle City semi-finals. Actually, before the semi-finals begin, we get a filler arc which involves Yugi and the gang going into a virtual world where they hold an entirely separate tournament.
The
Here
Big
they take
Five.
on the Kaiba Corp Big Five and Noah Kaiba, Seto Kaiba's dad's actual son, because Seto and Makuba were adopted for clarity's sake, for people that don't know that.
Wait, what did he say? Hold on.
And Makuba were Noah Kaiba, Seto Kaiba's dad's actual son, because Seto and Makuba were
Makuba. Remember that, people.
For clarity's sake, for people that don't know that. We also get the details about how Kaiba took over his father's company, which was quite ruthless. Other than that, not much else happens.
That was smart
in that arc. Anyway, after the interruption, Battle City begins to wrap up. The first battle is between Joey and Yami Marek, and guess who wins? Then Yugi and Kaiba.
Could you imagine Joey actually won that duel? You know how different that would be?
I've added again, and Kaiba hands over Obelisk the Tormentor to Yugi when he inevitably loses. Of course, Yugi wins the whole thing. We hope you aren't too surprised about that fact. After Yami Marek gets banished to the Shadow Realm, and everyone is just cool with regular Marek now. Winning the duel, Yugi gains possession of the Winged Dragon of Ra, meaning he now has all 3 god cards. That's it for Battle City now, but what happens next though? A quick interruption, that's what happens chronologically after the Battle City arc that takes place, but before the final arc of the original Yu-Gi-Oh, we actually get the last 2 episodes of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. What the fuck does that mean? Let me tell you. So, there's an important duel between Jaden and Yugi that never aired in the US. So, around here, Jaden fights Yugi. I'll explain more when we get to GX. Now, whether Jaden...
Some of the episodes that never existed in the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX series that we only was able to see via YouTube and all that stuff. Same thing goes with Season 4 of GX that was never available because, well, America.
He actually gets him back in time to deal with Yu-Gi-Moto, or if it's more of an imagination, a spiritual, or alternate timeline thing, who's to say? Not me. I'm just some guy. Anyway, putting that aside, we ask again, what happens after Battle City? Well, back-to-back filler arcs, of course. Okay, so maybe the filler arcs should have been taken seriously. However, these bait-to-sell children's trading card arcs really didn't offer much in the way of lore. But that Atlantis bit we mentioned earlier does come from this Walking the Dragon arc.
I just said that.
Is a hefty 40 episodes. In summary, Yugi Boy gets his god cards yanked and his soul stolen away, leaving Yami Yugi by himself. The gang...
Talk about the greatest meme in the world that we get from this season.
actually travels to Atlantis for like a second and leaves it in pieces. Yugi and Yami, who again is Atem, agrees to find out Yami's past together. This would lead us straight into the final arc, but instead we have a filler tournament that Yugi obviously wins. Really, believe us when we say nothing happens, but there is
It didn't really matter.
The Monkey Man, though. Shouts out to Abe the Monkey Man. So here's the thing about the final arc. We already talked about most of it. It's the dawn of the Duel arc, which largely takes place in the past, or at least a reimagining of the past called Memory World. So at this point, Bakura's trapped in the Millennium Ring and Yami Bakura begins to make his move. Secretly hitches a ride with Yami Yugi to the past, because Millennium items can do that, I guess. And an episode later, Shandi sends out regular Yugi and Ko first into Yami Yugi's mind and then eventually to the past with his Millennium Key. What happens next though? Well, pause the video and go back to when I talked about the 1000-ish BC section when you get up to this part. It's like a real life time travel, but I'll show you in visually what happens. So around, so this is when Jaden fights Yugi. And around here, which will be again 1990X, I get it, question mark, Yugi and the gang with Bakura go back in time using the Millennium item. So here's some little dial line for time travel. So this is when Yugi and the gang with Bakura, they all go back in time to 1000-ish BC, see the Atem, and help him defeat the great evil. But once again, I don't know if this is actually a timeline travel, but or an alternate dimension.
Sounds legit.
So technically, everyone's spirits are sent to a recreation of the past, like I just said, as opposed to being there directly in like a time travel situation. A similar version of these events occurred in the real 1000-ish BC, but obviously without Yugi and the gang. And it's not quite clear whether the actual past was changed or if it was only in this new version. A divergent or a duplicate timeline? Whatever you want to call it, it was made to sell cards for children and it wasn't so deeply thought out.
Except adults nowadays who buy children card games for their own damn purposes of spending thousands of dollars, not being able to sell any of it. Just saying. Seriously, adults, can we just make an impact? We're wasting thousands of dollars on trying to sell the same price or double the price online. Like, you're wasting your money. Let the kids buy them and do what they want with them. I was going to say, back in the day, kids used them for their bikes. Some of them used them for cup coasters. I don't know what happened to Pokemon. It's sad.
Few epilogue episodes that center around the only two people in the series that have yet to duel, Yugi and Atem. Yugi wins. Atem fades away and the Millennium items disappear due to plot. Fun fact though, in 2016, Yu-Gi-Oh! Dark Side of Dimensions, a movie, came out. And in that story, we have Kaiba digging up the remains of the Millennium items, recrafting the puzzle so that he can meet Atem again to fight him, to beat him, because, you know, Kaiba is Seto Kaiba. And he loses, but then after that, at the end of the movie, Kaiba actually sends his own consciousness straight to the afterlife in ancient Egypt to duel Atem once again, because he needs to prove to, I don't know, himself, I guess, that he's the greatest duel.
That makes no sense.
Yeah. God. Kaiba. Seto Kaiba. So, roughly around 1990X time, in GX though, Chancellor Shepard taught Zane Trustdale how to use the Cyber End Dragon. Maybe we'll be able to update the timeline in the future, but that's the end of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters for now.
Of course.
Fear not though, there's still Yu-Gi-Oh! GX and 5D, so let's chaz it up and get down.
I hate that quote. I really do.
GX is set 10 years after the original series ends. Not counting the events of Dark Side of Dimensions, we can call this GX period 2000X.
Question mark?
Knowledge that it could be anywhere in between 2001 and 2009. So it's never stated exactly when Duel Academy was made. And something that makes its history more tricky is that in the dub, Seto Kaiba is said to have established Duel Academy, which makes it feasible that it was built in that time frame. However,
shocking.
originally the ancient Kagemaru, antagonist of the first major GX arc, was its founder. Not existing in the original show, it's hard to say when it was really built. Also, sometime before the series began, Kagemaru locked away the sacred beast inside the sacred gate inside the school. Sometime around this time? Yeah. That's the mystery period right there. So, a few years before this series begins, before GX begins, Jaden wins a contest where his original duel monsters get sent into space by a satellite by Kaiba Corp. YuGiOh, an actual card and former neo-Spacian human turned monster spirit who's looked after Jaden since he was a kid, also gets sent up into space. This
which we still don't know why.
Down in the timeline. GX proper starts with Jaden Yuki getting handed a winged Kuribo by Yugi himself on the way to Duel Academy entrance ceremonies. So, YuGiOh is the start of GX. I should have also mentioned that YuGiOh, I guess, starts here, formally. YuGiOh. Okay, so in GX, the first major arc of the series revolves around the Shadow Riders, a group of nefarious duelists who Jaden, Chaz, and Co. have to defeat so they don't resurrect the sacred beasts and destroy the world.
Well, that's not the case.
Yes, the scales have been upped since YuGiOh Duel Monsters. Jaden beats Kagemaru, who's leading them, and seals the sacred beasts once more. Before the second arc of GX begins, Zane Trustel, who is Jaden's best friend's brother and the top-rated duelist in the Duel Academy, graduates and joins the Protégés. The beginning of the second season of YuGiOh GX marks a year both in real life and in story since the series began. So, we'll call this in a totally easy manner with, 2000X plus 1 year. The second chunk of GX revolves around the Society of Light, a secret society led
Not
by
the enjoyable
Taurus.
season.
Aster Phoenix, a highly skilled
He was a dick.
duelist, joins Duel Academy.
I didn't like him.
Jaden loses to him in a duel in the middle
First time.
of which Aster gets really cryptic and decides to leave Duel Academy for good. Spoilers,
For now.
It's not for good. It's bad.
Hey, he
Jaden
comes
ascends
back.
to Neo space, technically a spirit dimension and not actually space, and talks to aliens who look like the monster cards he designed that Kaiba Corp sent to space. After he comes back with new cards. Episode 62 might be the single weirdest Yu-Gi-Oh episode of all time. But then again, Arc 5 exists.
Yeah.
Jaden and Co. win some duels, and before long, Sartorius ends up joining the academy. Elsewhere, Zane becomes edgy and duels with Chancellor of the school in an old secret dojo location, who pleads with Zane to come back after losing to take part in a special tournament. Aster betrays the Society of Light, more duels happen, people get mind-controlled and then unmind-controlled, and there's even more duels. Eventually, Chaz wins the tournament. Go get him, Chaz. Chaz it up. Yeah. And Jaden
Stop saying Chaz it up.
Plan. So season 2 ends and another season, year, and arc starts, which we will call this year 2000X plus 2 years from, I guess, 2000X originally, even though it should be plus 1 year, but that'll be way too confusing. So, 2000X plus 2 years.
There's
now,
too much
we enter
adding years to
Dimension
it.
World, which is the last arc of GX to be dubbed. At the beginning of the season, Jesse Anderson, who shares a lot of common with Jaden, joins Duel Academy. After beating the mid-boss of the third arc, Viper, a big chunk of Duel Academy students ends up in a strange realm. In this place, all sorts of duel monster cards are just real monsters now. Through
Yeah.
the power of dueling, most of the students make it back. But Jesse gets stranded while YuGiOh makes her first big appearance. They all immediately go back to the other dimension to rescue Jesse, and things get dark on the journey. Slave camps, brutalities, live sacrifices, and more. Very friendly kid card game stuff right here.
And that
folks.
didn't get
Along the
censored
way,
at
Jaden
all.
realizes he is the Supreme King, whatever that is, and they eventually find Jesse, who is now under YuGiOh's control. There's a series of climactic duels, and how does that all resolve? Well, YuGiOh reveals her backstory. Being a human-turned spirit that watched over Jaden, and she really just misses him. Okay, and then Jaden...
Wait, go back to the cards again. I want to see what the cards were. Alright, I did have that card in Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden Memory. I see Beaver Warrior. isn't it like warrior something where like you can summon a warrior card from your hand or something? But I gotta say, how the fuck did this photo of YuGiOh get away with in America? That would never happen.
Just misses him.
I mean, seriously, guys. Look, and the fact that they got away with... Well, actually, to be surprised, they had to kind of fix it up.
And then Jaden Yuki uses super polymerization to fuse himself with YuGiOh forever.
Which makes sense.
So this is where Yu-Gi-Oh! GX ended. According to 4Kids TV,
True.
No, that is not the end. Surprise, you can watch the rest of GX, the Japanese version, on Crunchyroll.com. So this season...
Yeah, they're saying the fact that they... 4Kids ruined the opportunity because I would say that the season 4 GX was so good. Because it was like something different. I think it was like Truesdale or Truesman. Like these spirit things that would duel off against Jay and all them and end up being like this big epic battle between like Death and Jaden won it.
Was about half as long as the others. It centered around an enemy called Night Shroud, who made a couple of minor appearances previously. The Duel arc was really the crux of the GX lore, so this last set of episodes was more like a hurrah, victory lap, you know? That said,
in a way,
we had a very nice graduation moment, and at the very end, Jaden does get sent back in time to duel with Yugi. So
somehow,
let me show you that on the board. So after 2000X 2 years, supposedly, also, fun fact, I read on this thread that in Season 2, in one of the examination cards, they showed the date, and the date is supposed to be 2007 as the graduation. So supposedly, they graduate around the year 2007, maybe. So, after the graduation, Jaden, over here, goes back in time to here. Jaden goes back in time to duel with Yugi right here. Okay, so that is the true end of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. So now let's chaz it down. Grab your motorcycle and noom towards the future.
It could have been better if he just said let's rev it up, but of course he didn't think about that joke. I know this video's old. I believe this is like a couple years ago, but I was always so curious to know what the history timeline was, so I had to find one of my resources, so don't judge me if it changes. I don't know much about the other three, nor care, but yeah.
How far into the future, though? There's no exact dates given, and in fact, there's a lot of contradictory information. So, all we can say is that Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds takes place in the mysterious time of 20XX. Real quick, 17 years before the series begins, which we will call 20XX minus 17 years, the Zero Reverse occurred. An intentional energy overlord masterminded by Iliesta. Remember from early on in the video, I forgot exactly when I even talked about Iliesta. And carried out by Roman Goodwin. It split New Domino City into two and freed the Earthbound Immortals. Yusei Fudo's father, an NRD researcher who worked with Roman and Rex Goodwin, as well as his mother and Jack Atlas's parents, died during this tragedy that takes place.
Yes.
Actually, let me just do a little... Okay, so before the start of the series, which is here, Yusei, Jack, Crow, and Kalen form a duel gang called the Enforcers that eventually fell through. Okay, so the first...
Because Kalen got in trouble and got thrown under the bus.
Tournament, which mostly serves to introduce all the key players, like Yusei Fudo, Jack Atlas, Akiza, and others. We also start learning
She is a hottie.
Snipers, duelists with special glowing marks on their body, which include Yusei and Jack. There are also Dark Signers. Stuff starts to get hype during the climax of the tournament. A duel between Yusei and Jack where the sky gets dark and the Crimson Dragon appears in the sky. Then we get the 40-episode Dark Signer arc, which is more lore intense.
Yeah.
Using the Crimson Dragon's appearance as a sign, the Dark Signers put their plans into motion. They're comprised of people who hold some kind of grudge, most notable Roman Goodwin, and they wield the Earthbound Immortals, previously trapped in Nazca, freed due to the Zero Reverse incident. Their goal is to use the Earthbound Immortals to cause havoc and eventually summon the King of the Netherworld. Whew. That's their plan. Easy. So easy to follow. Okay, so despite the Signers beating the Dark Signers and Earthbound Immortals, Plot Magic still ends up summoning said King of the Netherworld. Rex Goodwin actually reveals himself to be a Signer and a Dark Signer. Bum, bum, bum.
Plot twist.
And also, surprise, is the real big bad of this series.
Okay, so hold up. I have to make another correction. So, Rex's backstory actually gets kind of screwed up because of a dub error. Now, in the dub, Rex is revealed that he's the 5th Signer during the Fortune Cup, but the arm that he uses to reveal that he's a Signer is actually Roman's arm. Roman was the true 5th Signer until he became a Dark Signer. So then Rex duels Roman to purposely lose. It's revealed that Rex had a solo judgment based on and could have won at any time, and he now becomes a Dark Signer. Okay, so then Rex then attaches Roman's arms to him to become the 5th Signer and final Dark Signer.
Despite these setbacks,
That's confusing.
you guys ends up winning. Who could have guessed? We'll jump forward 6 months, which we will call right here 20XX
Plus 6 months.
6 months. We see a tablet fall to Earth from space. It's quickly retrieved by that probably nefarious group, Iliaster. Duelists everywhere start gearing up for the World Racing Grand Prix, which turns out Iliaster has a hand in it too. The World Racing Grand Prix eventually gets underway, which many of the episodes were just never aired nor dubbed, so maybe you haven't seen any of them. Anyways, after winning a handful of duels, Yusei has an encounter with Lazar, who spells some details with Iliaster, including a connection with the Moment Express Development Agency. When they storm the agency over the next 2 episodes, what they learn and what happens really complicates things. So, what did that all mean in English exactly? So, let me break it down. Moment Express houses a machine called Infinity, which can not only transport matter, but can do something like crossing space and time by creating wormholes. Yes. Basically, this means Iliaster can and has used the power to change history. In fact, Yusei gets zucked up into a wormhole and, after experiencing a vision of his father, gets spat out in a world where the Grand Prix team lineup has changed and the Moment Express building doesn't exist. Infinity ability to make these wormholes and travel
I don't know
back
if that
and forth in
actually
time
exists
is
or not,
called
but
falsification of history. So, we'll call this new timeline 2000X plus 6 FH, falsification history, shortened down. So, the way it seems on this board is, so we go down here, and then right here is when the Infinity Stone, haha, that's a joke, Infinity Wormhole gets created. Yusei falls into it, and pop, out a new timeline, 2000XX plus 6 falsification of history, sorry, yeah. Despite this, timeline shift, the tournament continues, and Team Yusei wins, even when the finalist is the Emperor of Iliaster. Again, another shock. The dub version of 5Ds ends right here.
exactly. I was going to say the problem was they left it on a big cliffhanger. They never include the other battles that went on. Probably, once again, 4 kids decided to go, oh, that's too dangerous. We're not going to include it.
DX, the truth is out there, which you can watch on Crunchyroll.com. Okay, so what happens past the dubbed version? Well, turns out there's something called the Ark's Cradle, and it's about to fall on New Domino City.
A league of various antagonists throughout the series, led by Zone, get in the way of Yusei and Co. trying to stop it. After all the bad guys get beaten or converted to good guys, Yusei and Zone have their final duel.
But there's still more surprises in store.
First of all, Zone is Yusei from
The future.
Or, as it's revealed, he did some future plastic surgery and decided to look like Yusei and act like Yusei to save the rest of humanity.
More on that
In a
a
way.
second.
So, even with all that effort, Yusei wins and Zone is humanized at the very end, sacrificing himself to save everybody in Yusei's place.
Okay, so we're treated to a couple of epilogue
Makes no
episodes,
sense, but
that
go
take
on.
place 6 months after that. So we can call this 20XX plus 1 year false historification. Yeah, so Yusei duels Jack one last time, winning. And before watching everyone set off on their new journeys, Yusei becomes a scientist, just like his dad, creating a new energy system that'll help everybody and hopefully not blow up and destroy the world. And we get to see a clip 8 years into the future, which we will call 20XX plus 9 years, false historic vacation, where we see glimpses of Jack, Akiza, and the others' future. The end? Well, yes, but we have 2 loose ends to go over before wrapping up this timeline video. So, first off, what about Z1's future? Well, he came 200 years from the future, so we'll call this time 2200XX. Yeah, that's how math works. Basically, from what I can tell, I think it's before the infinity thing happens, so it's on this timeline, around here, 22XX, is when, you know, the timeline that's Z1's time, and then Z1.
Am I the only one really confused about this whole timeline series? Because like the 20XX and the FH is so confusing watching it. You're like trying to watch it and understand, like, I get it, but the reality is, like, I feel like sometimes he doesn't get it, but I give him credit where he's doing his research and studying. It's just very confusing.
Sent back himself and his agents around this time, or around here? Or here?
Somewhere.
Not 100% sure, but he does send himself and 4 other agents back from the year 22XX back in time. So at some of these points, yeah. So turns out that Z1 and the gang is impervious to the falsification of history events. So I guess we can assume that 22XX is the same future for both the 20XX and 20XX false history timelines. So I'm trying to think. Maybe he goes back like here, and then the tragedy doesn't happen, and then we get possibly a 20XX good timeline? So that's the last bit of major canon in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters timeline. But then again, one last thing we have to get out of the way before letting you go. How do we know 5D's canon? So GX has enough characters from the original come through that we can definitely consider it canon, even if certain details don't hold up under scrutiny. Okay, so the thing with 5Ds is that it's so far into the future and has its own mythology with signers. That's why many people don't consider it part of the canon. But we need to talk about the second Yu-Gi-Oh! Film, Bonds Beyond Time.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I forgot.
Midway through 5Ds, then goes back to sometime at the end of GX, and finally both Yusei and Jaden travel to Yugi's time in 19XX. So now talking about the movie, it seems to be canon with 5Ds, taking place after Dark Signers, but before the World Grand Prix Championship, which is around, I believe, here. So the main baddie in that movie is Z1's lackeys.
The Paradox.
And Paradox, I believe, uses a one of those rare dragon cards. I think that card takes them back in time. And so Yusei goes back in time after graduation and after Jaden fights Yugi. So Yusei meets Jaden, they duel again, and then the same guy, Paradox, uses that ability to time travel again, and then they time travel to around here to meet Yugi. So Yusei, and Jaden. Okay, so the weird bit is that Yugi acts like he's never met Jaden before, which is false because, as we all know, at the end of GX, right here, Jaden goes back in time and fights Yugi, right there. And
if it's not come out on TV, it doesn't really matter.
Could be a thing where Jaden and Yusei went to an alternative past, not actually this timeline past. So that's why I didn't mention it when we're first making the timeline. We're doing it right now. But it is considered canon. This movie is considered canon.
Everything is considered canon nowadays.
You can see that Yusei and Yugi are in the same timeline universe. So therefore, 5Ds is in the is in the universe. Also, another thing that connects 5Ds to the Yu-Gi-Oh! OG universe is this one dude named Tetsu Trudge, who in the 5Ds universe works as a member of Sector Security. And in the original Yu-Gi-Oh! He was a high schooler who, in a flashback we see, beating up Joey and Tristan. As, the
How about that?
That makes sense. So, he was basically high schooler here, and now he's a grown-ass
Security
man
guard
working for the security department somewhere in the 5Ds universe. So, that's another thing. There's two key facts why 5Ds is part of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Universe. That is it, folks. Well, not obviously, because we didn't include Zexal, Arc 5, and Brains.
Thank
So
God.
I guess it really isn't it. So, okay. So I know I said I'll get back to how Zexal and Arc 5 is all connected, but here's a short breakdown. So apparently, this is from a YouTuber named @YuGiOh Everything, but he thinks that sometime after GX, Kaiba and Kaiba Corp is no more, and the NRD moment isn't created, and so it doesn't cause a giant world-splitting event. So that's why in the Zexal world, there's no bikes, there's no synchros. So now, you might say, Tim, isn't that just an alternative universe somewhere else, unconnected?
True.
No. You see, in episode 15 of Zexal, we see the main character go into a temple, and he sees old legendary Duel monster statues, like Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl, Blue Eyes White Dragon, Red Eyes Black Dragon, and others. So, which shows that the original Yu-Gi-Oh! World existed in the Zexal world, which connects Zexal to the timeline, supposedly. So apparently, somewhere around here, Kaiba died, and then didn't happen, and then a new alternate dimension started, and then that's Zexal. Yeah, there we go. That's Zexal. That's Zexal world right there. It just goes off in its own, and that's a terrible way to show it on the board. But now for Arc 5, there is an image of the Leo Dual School's curriculum sheet, and it talks about synchro summoning and Fudo style. So this also shows that in this world of Arc 5, there's game mechanics that come from 5Ds. So how is that so?
I don't know.
In Arc 5, they just straight up go, yeah, the universe was originally one, but it's split into 4 different universes, and people can just travel to each other's universes freely. So that's how advanced they are. So maybe it's part of the alternate 5Ds universe timeline, or so someone from the Arc 5 world using the dimension hopping hoppity goodness goes to the 5Ds world. This is terrible. Somewhere along the 5Ds world, and just takes the technology of synchros.
Nothing makes sense
bikes,
anymore.
Fudo style, I guess, and then just implements it in the Leo school. God, this.
Yeah, at
board
least
is
Leo
looking
gets some credit for
terrible.
once.
Oh, fun fact. In Zexal, they say the entire universe was created from a dragon called number 100 Numeron Dragon. So, I'm just gonna go and add this right here. 000 BC. The universe was created by a dragon. Okay.
Somewhat.
Well, so I'm pretty much done. Okay. So here's the totally not completed and convoluted timeline of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Timeline universe. And if I made any mistakes or mispronunciations of names like I usually do, please let me know in the comments down below so I can read them and cry in the shower once again. So, thank you so much for watching. Press the subscribe button. Check out the other videos we have. Subscribe to Crunchyroll, and hope you all have a good day.
Okay, wait, what? Remember when Yu-Gi-Oh! Was about myrrh? We have to check that out eventually. But anyway, guys, so you kind of understand a little bit of the timeline between the OG to GX to 5D. I mean, is he technically correct? Probably not. Is there confusion with this? Absolutely. Overall, there's a weird connection. I think somewhat it works, but eventually we'll figure out the answer. So hopefully you guys understand like I do. I have a headache right now, but thank you guys for watching. Remember, subscribe, check out the playlist, and, hit the like button. Want me to react to other weird anime stuff that you guys want me to do? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. This is Michael, signing out.